I can remember him saying, I feel like my body's trying to tell me something and I need to listen. And so he made an appointment for a checkup.
Yep. And on May 3rd, went into the doctor and explained the story of a few things with some easy bruising and bleeding that I was having. And I said the same thing to the doctor. My body's trying to tell me something and I don't know what it is, but I think I need a blood lab to help determine, because we can tell so much by your blood nowadays. And she said, okay. And they did the lab. This was on a Wednesday afternoon. I went back to work, and at 4:45, which is kind of interesting, I had at 5 o'clock I had a Roger Maris board meeting in my office, and at 4:45 I get a phone call from the doctor, and she said, Dave, your results are in and your blood levels are way off, your white blood cell count's way off the charts. And I looked it up on my computer real quick, and I said, leukemia? She said, well, maybe I can't diagnose that, but it could be. So she said, I'm gonna have to refer you to hematology as quick as we can. I said, okay. So 20 minutes later, I get a phone call, and it's the doctor, and she said, I have an appointment for you at the Roger Maris Cancer Center tomorrow morning, 7:30. So 7:30 a.m. So I'm like, okay. So that evening I went home and told Paula, and we talked about it. Didn't tell the kids, we didn't know for sure what was going on, but we went in that next morning, 7:30, and they started doing the labs and the testing, and sure enough, you have leukemia.
Well, when we looked online the evening before, we had no idea how many kinds of leukemia there was. So we didn't want to even tell the kids until we knew more what we were dealing with.
Yep. So actually this was May 3rd. It was May 2nd when we had the doctor appointment. It doesn't matter. So we went in, and the lab results start coming in, and we're still there at the hospital, and then the doctor says, yep, it's acute myeloid leukemia. A little bit later, it's, I think, subtype M2. They were really drilling in as the results were coming of what it was, and he said, we're going to admit you right away. I said, okay. So, all I had was my what I wore to the hospital that morning, and I got admitted. And the next day, we started chemo.
They said, we're going to admit you, and you're going to be in the hospital for 4 to 6 weeks. And we said, well, could we wait like 10 days? Because our daughter's grad party's in 10 days. And they said, no. And I said, well, surely he can leave for like 2 hours for Peyton's graduation. And they said, no. We had no idea what we were dealing with. I mean, you hear about cancer, and leukemia is a different breed of cancer.
Yeah, it's
been a steep learning curve.
Cancer of the blood cells, and right away, I think I just took it. What the doctor said, we had to start treating it, and I started reading and doing education, and as the days went on, I was fortunate that I didn't get sick, and the chemo was dripping into my body for 7 full 24-hour periods. Mm-hmm. And when that was over with, I was, again, felt fine, eating 3 meals a day, wasn't nausea. Yeah, felt good, never got sick. So, but I had to stay there, and they had to watch me, and I was there for 25 days. Mm-hmm. And
you go in for a doctor's appointment, and you don't come out for 25 days. But boy, were we lucky that Roger Maris Cancer Center is right here in Fargo. Mm-hmm. So I was just 20 minutes away. And
very fortunate. I know I've been fortunate my whole life and still am, but we have so many friends and network of friends through businesses and school and St. Anne and Joachim and Shanley High School. Just everybody was coming to visit me, and I had many days where there was hardly an hour or two where I didn't have someone visiting me in this small hospital room.
Which keeps your spirits up.
Mm-hmm.
And makes the time go fast.
It did. Yeah, it actually did go pretty fast.
Faster.
And, You know, it was great because there was a few events like my daughter Peyton's high school graduation party, which we had before commencement, and then the commencement day where we had special friends that set up video feeds.
Live feeds.
So I could watch from my hospital room. And yeah, that was very awesome. I was confined to my room, or the floor that I was on when I was at the hospital. So the only time I could leave my room, I had to put a face mask on, and I could be on the floor of the 7th floor of the hospital, but I couldn't leave the floor. And there's only one hallway basically straight down, which is a 1/20th of a mile with rooms on both sides, and that was my domain for quite a while. So 2-3 times a day at least I would walk the halls, and got up to 3-4 plus miles a day, and so I got pretty religious at exercising, and I think that's helped a lot too, and I try to continue doing that now, walking and riding bike on a regular basis, and yeah, that's good.
I think the first 25 days I was probably just trying to make it through one day at a time, and maybe still in a little bit of shock. You really feel like the rug's been pulled out from under you. Dave was admitted to the hospital on Thursday, and our youngest daughter had prom on Saturday. I mean, there's no way to prepare your child or your family for something like this, and yet life has to still continue. Our daughter was going to still go to prom, and I still had to be there for pictures, and then there's this process of telling people the news and trying to explain it and trying to wrap your head around it yourself, while people are like, wait a second, we just saw Dave 4 days ago and he looked healthy and he looked fine. And there's this whole component of really trying to wrap your head around what the situation is. But boy, were we blessed to have a lot of friends and a lot of support. He was in the hospital for 25 days the first day, and I didn't go to the grocery store once. My fridge was full of food. Our hearts were full of, we just felt a lot of support. But it was, I didn't sit on the couch once for 25 days because I was up at the hospital or trying to take care of our kids. And there's this whole, we went into the May 3rd, 7:30 in the morning hematology appointment, and we're sitting in the Roger Maris lobby, and I'd never been in there before, but for years we'd brought the kids with their jars full of change for the 61 for 61 fundraiser. I've worked the Roger Maris golf tournament. Dave's been on the board. You always think it's for somebody else. You never, I think that's one thing that's been hard for me, is to accept help and to be on the receiving end instead of the part where you're helping others. But boy, are we lucky to have such a great facility right here in Fargo.
Mm-hmm.
You just never think it's going to be for you. You just think it's going to be for somebody else. And it sure hits home for not just us, but for everybody we know, because Dave was very active, very busy, looked great, and even when he was in the hospital room, I know sometimes the nurses would come in on a shift change and say, who's got cancer? who's the patient? Who's the patient? Because he still looked really good. And look at him with his baseball hat on. And it can hit anybody. It can hit anyone.
Yeah, and it does.
Mm-hmm.
They say that, you certainly, if cancer, someone with cancer, if it hasn't hit your family, but families that it has, and I think that's very true. I'm still in the middle of this battle, so my concentration and focus is to research and have positive energy on how I can be cured. So I would say that, I'm not in this big, large reflective mode yet of how life has changed, and it has, and it will continue for sure, but I've just finished my second round of chemo. So, we are here on 21st of June today, so it's only been
51 days.
7 weeks, and I have more testing and potentially either 4 more months of chemo or a bone marrow transplant yet to happen this summer and fall. So, you know, a lot of things for me that has changed is focusing on finding a cure.
I would say I think our life came to a screeching halt. Like everything that you think you're going to do, whether it's next week or next month, is now put on the back burner because all of our energy and focus is on Dave's health and finding a path to a cure and what that entails. We were going to be empty nesters, so I knew that our life would change, and it's changed in a different way. But, oh.
I think
that was a bird.
Hopefully, not a raven.
So I think our life has changed in a different way, but there's things you didn't consider before that, and I think we've always lived our lives, you know, to take advantage of every moment, and every day is a gift. And so I don't think that portion has changed. It's maybe been amplified, that every day, every moment is a gift.
Well, I'm hoping to actually be able to be out there a little bit, but I just need to see how my blood counts are this weekend and if I can be around crowds or not. I just need to be careful, but I'm hoping to stop by. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, you know, the Roger Maris Celebrity Golf Tournament supports 3 charities, right? And or 3 different what do we call it? Organizations. Yep. So there's the Shanley High School, which our kids go to and we're part of, and the Roger Maris Cancer Center, which now I'm living and learning to be part of, and then hospice, which, you know,
has touched our lives in the past.
It has, and one day probably part of that too. But it has changed, and I don't know. One day I was in the hospital in May, and I saw some of the Roger Maris Cancer Center signs, and I just thought, you know, I'm going to give Roger Maris Jr. a call and let him know what's going on, because I've gotten to know him a little bit over the last few years. And I called him, and he said, I hope you're out golfing, or why are you calling here? You should be out golfing. I said, well, actually, I probably won't be golfing for a while. And I told him my story, and we've kind of touched base now every couple of weeks on the phone, and yeah, look forward to seeing him in person again. But I think it is interesting how these tie-ins kind of happen, and you get more emotionally attached, and I don't know what reasons that happens, but it certainly has.
I think you always help to help others. I mean, you give your time and your talent for good causes and to help others, but when suddenly you're in the position of needing those services, to have a facility like Roger Maris Cancer Center right here in Fargo, literally in our backyard, for our friends and our family that could go and visit Dave, we were in driving distance. We didn't have to be driving to Minneapolis for him to get cancer care. Or what a gift for our community to have such a high-level treatment facility right here in Fargo. And what a true legacy for the Maris family to know that they're helping others.
Yeah, as far as the other board members, you know, I think it's just a reminder that what we're doing to try to help raise money for great organizations and funds, it just adds a little extra closeness to the fact that, you know, we're doing a good job, and it affects all of us, and that it's important work when we volunteer, and you need to try to do your best to you know, raise the money and support the missions and the organizations the best you can.
How important it is. I pray for God to give us strength with whatever He gives us.
Yeah, I think it's strengthened our faith. Paula and I talk about it, a little more than we used to, and I'm just very positive and try to take all the positive messages that we get from others and that are praying for us. We have a huge support system, and I think it makes a difference. And there's never been a period really of where we just sit and say, why us, or why is this happening? We're just going forward with our plan for a cure, and we have so many friends and prayer lists that we're on, and I think the faith is certainly helpful in getting us through this time, and probably the rest of our life, really.
I always think I think that our prayers have been answered in many ways, just that he was able to tolerate the chemo treatment so well, which is very unusual. So I know that the prayers are working.
I've done 2 rounds of chemotherapy so far, and my test results from the biopsy will be at the end of this month to determine the effectiveness of the 2nd round. And if I am in remission, then I might have a choice to either cure this with more chemotherapy or a bone marrow transplant. If you have a bone marrow transplant, it's good to have a match. Siblings are generally the best choices for a match. I have 3 brothers, and all 3 of them were tested, and one of the 3 is a full match. So the great news is that if I do decide that I need the bone marrow transplant and we go down that path, that I have a brother that's waiting to provide me his good stem cells so that I can be cured, and that's great news.
One thing that happened, Dave was diagnosed on May 3rd, or May 3rd. On April 12th, we had been at a blood drive at Shanley, and for our daughter's class. And so Dave's always given blood. We've always given blood, and it's the first time he's ever, one of the first times you've ever been turned down. It was just because his hemoglobin was a touch low. So it's one more thing that you do in your life where you're trying to help others, maybe save a life. And so I've always thought giving blood was a good thing, but I didn't realize how much blood a cancer patient needs. They need a lot of blood. And so now we're on the recipient, or the receiving end of blood and platelets, and how lucky we are that people do continue to give. And we were lucky because Dave had a bone marrow match in his family, but a lot of people don't have that. There's this worldwide bone marrow registry, and so you can actually sign up to do a cheek swab, and you could save somebody's life, whether it be a relative or a stranger. But what a great thing that you could actually save somebody's life. So if you haven't signed up to be on the registry, it's a really great thing to do. And so prayers and giving blood and considering being on the bone marrow registry is like, people say, what can we do to help you? And I think those are 3 things that we can do to help. I mean, and supporting the Roger Maris Cancer Center, giving blood, being having your being in the registry worldwide.
I'm a B negative, which is a pretty rare. 2.3% of people have my blood type. But interestingly, if you have a transplant, blood type doesn't matter. So you can have a full match with a different blood type, because that's not a characteristic of the transplant. And if the transplant goes through and I have one, I would have actually a different blood type. I would get the blood type of my donor.
Your whole body resets with a bone marrow.
You become an X-Man.
Yes. Yeah, you get a whole new
on you and turn to steel and
whole new immune system, and you even have to get your immunizations after the first year, like you were a child after a transplant.
You re-immunize, like polio and everything. So we don't know what the next few months will bring. We're waiting for some tests, and if it's bone marrow, like you said, I've heard about bone marrow, a transplant, but I didn't realize it is a long process where we literally have to move, because they don't do bone marrow in Fargo. You have to go to like the U of M or Mayo, and it's like a 4-month process of, like Dave said, he's got to be really nice to me because I got to take care of him.
Yeah, you need a full-time caregiver, so I'm hoping that that Paula will keep the job the whole time. I've said this for decades, and it's true. No, it's not a mantra, really. I just am thankful because I always say that I'm very fortunate, and I've always said that, whether it be in work, personal things, sports, etc. I've had a very fortunate life, and things are good, and I still believe I will continue to do lots of things over the next decades, and I'm just very thankful and very fortunate.
Mine is, there's always a silver lining. He's got a rough cancer, but it's treatable. And we've got a great cancer center in Fargo. We're pretty lucky because we're going to be empty nesters, so we're not going to leave young kids at home, and I know a lot of people do have to do that. So I think we're still really lucky in many, many ways.
Yeah, very appreciative that they are donating money and coming to the golf tournament, and it goes to good causes, and just continue to do what you're doing and support and enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the weekend, have fun, go golfing. I want to be there shortly.
Give a little more. We don't realize how our generosity can impact people's lives and save people's lives. So, lucky to have a great treatment center right here in Fargo, right here in North Dakota.
All right, honey.